the late President Moi rigged in 1992 to some extent, but Moi capitalized on the division of the opposition. Opposition combined had 64% of votes against Moi's 36. So Moi was a minority president.
You check along the way, we didn't have things like biometrics, digital registers, electronic voting systems. And this actually brought up to enhance transparency. But the question is, has it actually sophisticated ways to steal elections?
And I think this is even more serious for our country. It's almost reasonable.
President Kibaki, to some extent, Kibaki was a gentleman. He assumed office with absolute power, just like Moi and Kenyatta. But Kibaki was an intellect.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation yet another time. This is the PowerTable. And my name is Eugyne Kwach. Of course, tonight I'm joined again with these two gentlemen. My first guest is called Mbuthi Gathenge. He's a senior counsel joining us for this conversation. Thank you so much, senior counsel, for joining this conversation.
Thank you.
And of course, we also have Eliud Onyango, who is a researcher, joining us for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, you also, our viewer, we thank you. And of course, we begin with one of the most fundamental and perhaps unsettling questions in any democracy. Are elections stolen? And that is the question that we're tackling tonight. So who is behind the theft and why? How exactly is it done? And is this phenomenon global or unique to certain regions? Well, over the years, we've witnessed significant developments in electoral technology and reforms aimed at ensuring transparency. But have these efforts truly restored integrity to the process, or have they introduced new forms of manipulation? This and many other more questions, we are going to get to answer them on this question tonight as we get to unpack the complex world of electoral intrigue, where democracy now is meeting deception. Well, these gentlemen are going to assist me as we get to unpack these issues in this time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, once again. Mbuthi Gathenge, senior counsel, it's been long since we met the last time.
It is, yes.
Yes. How's life been?
It's okay. It's all right.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Eliud Onyango, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I want us to begin this conversation. But before we talk about the elections, because we're talking about a very big issue, are elections stolen? Yeah. And we have a lawyer, a senior counsel, an advocate, Mbuthi Gathenge, of course, a researcher, who is going to give us his views, perspective, according to the research that he has been doing. And of course, Mbuthi Gathenge is quite old. Therefore, he's got a lot of experiences because he's lived actually throughout the time and since the first president, if I'm not wrong. So he's got an understanding of how the electoral landscape in Kenya is actually. But perhaps if we could begin with the first question before we talk about the elections, is one issue that actually is actually happening, and many Kenyans are actually asking, what is happening? The Court of Appeal has actually disqualified the 3-judge bench, which dispensed the conservatory orders. So who is the deputy president? Is it Rigathi Gachagua? Is it Kithure Kindiki?
Yeah.
Or who is the deputy president?
Yes, Kwach, that's a very difficult question. And the good reason why it's difficult is because we have two institutions. One was the Senate, and it did its impeachment. And I believe it is completed subject to the challenge that were before the court. On the other hand, we have a judiciary which now had a responsibility of giving security to Mr. Gachagua or the deputy president until the finalization of the court process. And then we have Professor Kidviki. And I, with very due respect, I have no reason to pass any judgment against anybody. But in my view, the process of assumption of office had already been stopped. And so when the judges sat and made a decision, that process of completing the assumption of office had not been completed. we lawyers talk about jurisdiction, and a jurisdiction is very important. So the jurisdiction of the 3 judges has been challenged and confirmed in the Court of Appeal that they were not regularly or legally in office at the time they lifted the orders. So my friend Professor Gathenge is in the air somewhere. He is neither, he is a deputy president
Yes.
as far as the impeachment is concerned,
Yes.
but he is not a deputy president
Yes.
because the process of assumption of office has been challenged. And this process of assumption of office is not an idle talk.
Okay.
It's a part of our constitution. If he is to assume office, he must take an oath of office. And the oath of office is very clear. What are his responsibility? He must advise the president, he must keep secrecy of the cabinet deliberation or any deliberation he has with the president. This oath of office has been challenged because it's part of the assumption of his office. So legally speaking, he has not completed the process of assumption of office, and therefore he cannot purport to be in law a deputy president.
So Kithure Kindiki is not the president.
He's
not the deputy president.
He has not been. He has been nominated.
Is it a de facto or a de jure?
He's neither. I would say he's neither
Yes.
because the process has its legal and constitutional requirement. And you cannot wish away any of them.
Let me ask you this before I come to you, because you're a lawyer.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, because you see, the person of the Deputy Chief Justice, can such a person make such a monumental mistake by constituting a bench, the 3-judge bench, against the law?
I have the same query myself because I know she's a very qualified person. And the article that gives the Chief Justice the mandate does not delegate. So she should have looked at the level of delegation. So in my view, it could be a monumental mistake, and she may, unfortunately, has no forum in which to express herself. But it is a regrettable issue, especially when it comes from the same judiciary that saw Professor Gathenge. You see, so we have two same institution, one swearing and another one dealing with the matter as far as assumption is concerned, and another one questioning the assumption of office.
Ah, interesting.
So we have a judicial crisis, I may say, and it is partly internal because the deputy CJ may have her own reason, which I personally has not been able to read in the judgment.
Yes. Eliud, let me just loop you in generally to understand what you think about this particular issue. More so that we are now in this dispensation, we are talking about even impeachment of the deputy president, something we didn't have in the old constitution. What do you make of this particular impeachment, how it has gone, and even into the future? Because it then means Rigathi Gachagua may have a chance to contest. What even becomes of the opposition with everyone wanting to become president?
Okay, legally or constitutionally, the arm of the government that is in charge of that is mandated to do impeachment is the parliament. It is initiated at the National Assembly and then concludes at the Senate. And up to that point, when the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua was impeached, there was no court that stopped the two institutions of parliament from doing that work. So that one, I think Rigathi stands impeached because no court of law in Kenya, no judicial institution, either the magistrate court, court of high court, court of appeal, or even the Supreme Court stopped either the National Assembly or the Senate from conducting that business. So to that extent, I think the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua stands impeached. What the senior counsel has said, which I also agree with, that immediately after the impeachment, there were several court cases, some injunction here and there. So that is where now the technicality comes in with the swearing in of Professor Kindiki Kithure. Was it procedural? And the Court of Appeal has found it to be that it was unprocedural. And you know, it is the courts that interpret the law. So as of now, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua was impeached. He can't be the deputy president. The Honorable Professor Kindiki Kithure was put into office unprocedurally. So as of now, legally, I think we don't have a deputy president. Yeah, we don't have a, based on that. Because the other one was impeached. No court stopped impeachment. That was done. And because that is the work of the two arms of parliament. That is that is the National Assembly and the Senate. They did their work. So the court was now to come in and to interpret it was the impeachment done procedurally.
Okay.
So that is where now the courts are coming, and that's why I think up to that extent there is an issue with the Honorable Professor Kindiki Kithure being in office. Yeah, I think that one the courts are right.
Okay.
Because they're the ones who interpret the laws, and they have found some faults in the way the process moved on after impeachment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well put. I would have asked a lot of questions around whether we should go back to the old system where the deputy president needed not to be impeached if the president himself did not feel like working anymore with the vice president.
I think Kenya having come from that long protracted political environment where the president was everything, the vice president was just a ceremonial, he would be sacked even when the president on the roadside. So Kenyans were fatigued. They wanted an institution or a constitutional framework that would somehow protect the second in command. But then along the way, those who have, so far we have only added three. That is the Honorable Dr. William Samoei Ruto and the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, and then now Professor Kindiki Kithure. Somehow, the two of them, the last two, barring the Professor Kindiki Kithure, they found that thing protects them a lot. The law protects them a lot, that they can just do anything they want. So I think it is now a weakness that we as Kenyans we are seeing, that we thought we were protecting that institution. Not little did we know that we'll even make the institution be a problematic in terms of governance structure at the presidency level is concerned. Because now you see, it's not just with the Honorable Kindiki Kithure. We saw in the last 10 years when the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta was in power, we saw the protracted discourse between him and the current president when he was the deputy. So you would see Ruto knew that maybe President Uhuru had no capacity to sack him because he's protected constitutionally. And then secondly, Ruto having been also a cunning vice president, he ensured that the Jubilee wing, he had a majority of MPs siding with him, and including those from his President Uhuru's region. So he felt like impeachment can't work. So he knew what he was doing. So the only thing that happens, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua tried to follow that route. But the problem that the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua had at the election or at the nomination level of UDA, parliamentarians and even MCAs, governors, before election, the Honorable Rigathi didn't have much say on who comes in even from Mount Kenya. It's like President Ruto controlled a lot. This is different from when President Uhuru ran for a second time with Ruto. President Uhuru left the current President Ruto to run the show for Jubilee, including in Central. And that's how I want to say, without fear of contradiction, that he rigged several veterans, politicians from Mount Kenya, and replaced them with novices whom he could easily manipulate in that parliament. That's why those people you find, several, almost over half of MPs from that region during President Uhuru's second term, were like owing their allegiance to deputy president as opposed to the president, because he's the one who rigged them during nomination and then eventually became MPs. So as opposed to that, on regard, they didn't have this leeway. President Ruto controlled everything. So that's why at the time he was being impeached, he didn't even have, even in fact, it was even so shameful that even the MP from Madeira, his own constituency, voted yes to impeach him.
Wow, quite much interesting, Wakili.
Yes.
Because I want us to begin these conversations about the elections, whether elections are stolen or not. And permit me to just ask you, because we have had the new IBC, that is the chairperson, and of course some commissioners.
Yeah.
Generally, what do you make of this new commissioner before we get to dig deep?
Well, you're asking me for my own personal views. And first and foremost is that there is a need to look into the qualifications, the experience, and also the integrity of the candidates as a chairperson or even the commissioners themselves. In the past, we have had problems, and therefore Kenyans must be very alert as to who is now being elected as chairperson. I have no personal reasons to question the qualification of the chairperson. I think he's a lawyer, and he looks like he has been exposed. But I also compare him with my learned friend Charles Nyachai. And I see Nyachai as a person who had actually been given the responsibility of the implementation of the Constitution. That's a very big credit to him. That he was single-handedly identified as a proper candidate for that. He has also been a chairman of the Law Society at one point. He has had, when you are a chair, you have also a lot of challenges, and you enjoy a lot of benefits. I will not be surprised if Charles had not dealt with situations that arose in the past concerning election. So I may be biased in saying I thought Charles was very qualified. On the other hand, there is a question of integrity. The integrity doesn't go to the person himself. It may go to the person he is associated with. And in law, we say there seems to be justice to a situation. If my brother is the one who is the chairperson, and I am serving the president currently, surely there is a very big question of whether there would be independence. Now, again, I have looked at the Constitution and the judgments that have been delivered before. And there is one that caused me a lot of worry, in that in the last election, it was clearly distinguished that the decision of the chairperson is final, as opposed to a corporate decision of the commission. You see, so this gives the chairperson a lot of authority, unless otherwise interpreted in the future. So the chairperson of the AIBC today seems that he can stand alone and give a declaration that the president has been elected. And we had four dissenting voices against three. So that's a cause for worry. Both the chairperson and those commissioners. And this issue has not been addressed, as far as I know, in law. And I think we may have to have a clear position later. So I'm worried when we pick a chairperson who has some connection in whichever nature with another person in State House who has a very high position. We must always know that Kenyans do associate decisions with persons instead of having clear mandate being given. So I'm worried.
Okay.
But I'm not worried because I have any personal issue with Ethicon.
Yes.
I think that is his name, Ethicon. But if I was asked, I would have said either Charles, Amandi, or others fitted this boot. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Eliud, what do you make of the new commission?
Okay, for the new commission, I think it is just a game of musical chairs. Nothing has changed as far as, because our elections are rooted deep into our society. We are a society that is deceitful. This is what I want to say with a lot of reservation, because you find, let alone even the politician, because these politicians come from us. They are our sisters, they are our brothers, mothers, fathers, uncles, cousins, you see. So the behavior, the only difference between them and us is that once they are sent top there, they are now into the limelight, public limelight. So the media scrutiny, public scrutiny becomes so big, so huge. But actually go back to the villages. What they do here is what we people do in the villages. So we are a society that needs what we call proper soul searching into our ethos, into our morals. You see, like now, the currently reconstituted IBC, they won't do much. The reason why they won't do much is because of political interference. Political interference. Political interference stems from politicians themselves. You see, like now, the president is appointing authority. I want to believe by the time he was appointing Mr. Boom, Rastas Boom, he must have had a conversation with the gentleman. You get it? He must have had a conversation with the gentleman. And being an African, no president would want to appoint a commission that is going to send him home. That one is a surety. So Ruto appointing a Boom, Mr. Boom, President Ruto appointing Mr. Boom, they must have had a conversation. And rumors that are running right, center, and left that Mr. Boom is somehow related to the former governor of Turkana, Mr. Nanok, Josephat Nanok. That one should be a reason to worry about. Because Mr. Nanok works at the State House. He's a senior political figure at State House. I think. And now somebody related to close to him is now coming in as the IBC chair. So it is a reason for not just politicians, but every Kenyan to be worried about the elections. But the problem that we have with the election stems from the society itself. We are not a honest society. We are people who like cutting deals.
Who should elect IBC?
Yeah? So what I'm saying is this. Whoever comes in, our ethics is eroded. Whoever comes in will just fall in that trap. I see. Whoever comes in will just fall. Even if I'm the one who is elected, if you don't fall into that trap, the only other option for you is you get inside there, you test it, you find it very bitter, you resign. But once you get inside there and you refuse to come out, you'll have to play in that murky water. So we as a society, we need to sit with ourselves and define the kind of society we want to live in, and we want to leave behind for the future generation. Because it has eroded, it's a society that lacks morals. If we are a society that follows, that are morally upright, we have a very elaborate constitution. But believe you me, we enacted in 2010, to date, Chapter 6 that talks about integrity has never been implemented. Why do they want to implement it? Because it will cut them left, center, right. Nobody will be left right from presidency to MCAs. Nobody will be left.
Yeah.
We're just discussing casually about an MP. I would say without fear of contradiction that over 80% of MPs in that parliament are thugs. We elect people not because they are the upright people, the people to be in those offices. We elected because they can bribe us enough. Or they come to us loaded with money that they have already stolen elsewhere.
Okay, what do you make of this? Don't we have an elaborate constitution that can actually help us to overcome all these things? Or the problem still lies with the people?
I would like to say we have not only a good constitution, we are a very religious people, both as Christians and Muslims and Hindus, and even our own traditional churches our culture is we must respect first standards, whether the standards are set by the Council of Elders or they are set by independent institution, or we have set them ourselves in our constitution. So what is lacking and what we are going through now is a very bad experiment. Bad experiment in that we are not able to put in force what we have ourselves decided is important. If you look at Article 89, which governs voting, it's very clear. If you look at the article that set up the commission itself, it's very clear. And especially the article that governs the manner in which the chairperson or the commission should conduct its affairs. It must follow the constitution and it must follow the legislation. So we have a constitution which substantially talks about both the institution, the EIBC, and talks about procedures.
Wow.
So they should be followed.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that it is a bad experiment, and we need to make sure that we make our constitution work. We cannot escape.
Wow.
Otherwise, we will go back to post-election violence every time.
Wow, quite profound.
Yeah.
What a way to start. And this actually leads us to now the core of the conversation
Yes.
that we're having tonight. Let me just begin with you, Senior Counsel.
Yeah.
Are elections stolen?
Yeah, I am a lawyer, and when you talk about some terminologies like stealing, I go back to my law book, and stealing means something that is capable of being stolen. There must be a exportation you have carried from the owner. So I would rather use the word rigging.
Okay. Yes.
And surely they have.
Okay.
And we are not making history by the last few rigging. Rigging has always been there.
Okay.
And it stems from the fact that election is a competition. You are given a number, either in a register or in an agreed number that should determine the qualification or the right of a person to govern them. So you can go back to the history of this country, and you will find many instances where rigging has taken place. And it has taken place not because of the weakness in the law. It has taken place because of the human nature. That if I'm in competition, I will try to find the loopholes, the weakness in the system. Even if it's a football club, some people will try to bring a register of their own, you see, rather than use the register that is agreed of the members. So rigging has been there, but I can also say in brief, the first rigging was post-independent. And the reason was because of the structures that were put then. For example, the returning officer was a district officer or a DC. You see, in fact, I think he was a DC. Now that squarely tells you he was an administrator, he was in the executive. And he is supposed to preside or to give a verdict on a political process. I have done a lot of election petitions. In fact, I started around 1980. And the first one, we were challenging an election where we were challenging an election where the DC made a decision in Nyandarua. Rigging is contravention of the rules and the regulations that are put for purpose of conducting an election. So to answer your question, after the 2010 constitution, we have had three major cases, I believe, 2013, 2017, and 2022. And the issue were rigging. And I want to confirm that rigging exists. And we should expect rigging. in 2027.
Okay. Well, we're going to come to that on 2027. But let me just come to you, Eliud. What's the view? Are elections rigged?
Exactly, precisely that. Just like lawyer senior counsel has said, elections are rigged. But now there's an interesting dimension senior counsel has brought that now ties what I was saying earlier, or rhymes with what I was saying earlier, that our morals, our societies are eroded. Take for instance in Germany. In Germany, elections are conducted by government officials. Go to the United States of America. Each state conducts its own election. There's nothing like national electoral commission. Elections are done state by state, and each state conducts its own election. For instance, in the just concluded election of 2024, the governor of Pennsylvania, who was in charge of that state, is a Democrat governor. But Donald Trump won there. Because those people have integrity. They let the process take its own course without interference. Because at the end of the day, they are all Americans. If we can agree that at the end of the day, we are all Kenyans, if it is Senior Counsel Gathenge who has beaten me, it is a Kenyan. So we move forward, we will not have these issues. It is the morality, eroded society. Yeah. America, the Democrat states conduct elections in democratic states. The Republican states, for instance, in 2020, for the first time in a long period of time, the Democrats beat Republicans in Arizona. Arizona has been a Republican state for close to like 66 decades. But then for the first time in 2020, Arizona went blue. Much as it was going blue, both the governor and the senator from that state were Republicans, but the Democrat won it. Now, for a very long time, Pennsylvania was a Democrat state. In 2024, Donald Trump flipped it red. And who was in charge of that election? Democrats, because it was a Democrat state under the governorship and all legislative assembly members from Democrats, majority from Democrats. Those people have integrity. Those people have morals. The equation about our election is still the same equation about the corruption we see in this country, the runaway corruption and the impunity. We are a country whose moral is eroded. Elections elsewhere are conducted by government officials, like the senior counsel is saying. There's nothing wrong if we are a country of moral. It stems from this fact that once I'm in a government position, I think I owe allegiance to president. Well, president might have appointed me, but the president should have appointed me because of my capacity to deliver in that docket or in that sector, not as a favor. So first of all, we must start by thinking that once I'm in a position, whether I was appointed by the president or not, I'm serving Kenyans and I'm doing service to the Republic of Kenya, not the president. That's why we get it wrong. That's why I was saying right now, the current IBC commissioners who have been appointed, you'll find they'll owe their allegiance to the president as opposed to the constitution. So whatever they'll be doing looking behind what is the president saying. What does the president want? That is how we work here. Government, countries all over, elections are presided over by government officials, but there's integrity. There's a level of morals that they know whatever they're doing for the benefit of their country now, presently, and for the future generation. That is what we are lacking, I think. So that is why we can't get it right, not in elections, not in governance, not in everything, because we are a country that don't have morals. So that's what I'm telling you. I've just given you an example of America, where a Democrat state conducts an election and the presidential candidate from a Republican wins in that state. There's no interference. Otherwise, it would have been easy if they lacked morals. They would just simply rig in that state and give the Democrats or the Republicans the win. You see?
I think we will talk about electoral renaissance.
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, perhaps in your view, because you've lived through these ages, to experience during Kenyatta's time, Moi's time, Kibaki's time, who influences elections on whose behalf? When you talk about the fabric, because you talk about integrity as an integral issue within our societal fabric, why can't we change? Or rather, what is the problem? Yeah, so there's a lot of questions actually, even who orchestrates this electoral fraud?
I will not attribute it completely on our morals, because we are very good people. We wake up in the morning, some of us in Central Province even sing about it, that we wake up in the morning and go and vote. To that extent, we respect the vote. I believe the biggest problem is what I've talked about, experiment. When you talk about the United States, they have voted for thousands of years, I think. For them, they have no problem. There is an unusual premium put on elections. And forgive me if I don't pronounce it right, we roast our hair. So what I'm saying is that we have put our interests too much in what come out of election. For example, in the countries of Europe, you hear Britain, the Prime Minister has called an election and it is done and finished. And people go back to work. But the premium we have put on a member of parliament, an MCA, and the president, including the president, is unnecessary. We should have other interest, economic, social. Our people, our young people, should be able to go and dance immediately after voting. They don't have to hang around there. They hang around there maybe because there is money, so they have their interest. So what I'm saying is this: it is the interests, is what I get after getting into parliament, that is attracting this unusual competition. It is the person who sits in State House, his interest and the interest of those close to him. And I want to correct, the president does not go to State House for his tribe. He goes for himself, you see? Because if you go to Baringo today or any other area, you find as many poor people as you find in Central Province. During our late president, Moi, you would have gone to Baringo and found insecurity in respect that he was a president. So it is a personal interest that is taken into State House that is the main problem. And the fact that we also, morally good people, worship the wrong thing. I want to believe this. The reason why the Americans and the Europeans and other countries, even like Italy, do not have that stiff competition that people can give about is because there are other economic areas that they have invested. You see? So I am very happy with the Gen Z today because they are telling us economics. They are not talking about politics. They are not even talking about their own leadership. You see? That is the renaissance that we need. That we should be able to tell our people there is even a bigger salary if you are a bank manager. If you are doing a good enterprise, don't go to State House. Because State House, you are not going to get more than, I think, 2 million. You see? There are some entrepreneurs here who are making 10 million a day. So it is our wrong emphasis. It's our wrong premium. We put premium where it doesn't belong. It's a change of mind. In US today, and I'm not very good in research in America, I think they look like they are going the wrong way too. You have the elite and the rich, seems to enjoy being presidents and the interest associated with presidency. So what I'm reading is about the tycoons in US getting closer to the president because he can afford to give them all they want. Now, to me, that's a wrong direction. But again, we should not always copy the Americans. And I also want to correct my friend here, that they also had a share of problem. We had the all-go case, right, where there was alleged rigging. So nobody immune, but they have a very good history. They have been able to stabilize themselves so that an election doesn't disrupt When we go for election 2027, I doubt whether anything else will be happening. All attention is there. That we must diffuse that sort of energy, distribute it elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are elections stolen?
Now, elections in Kenya, initially, I was young, I was during 1998, the Mlolongo system, where people would queue, and I was hearing these stories from my dad and the others that people would queue in a Mlolongo behind their candidate or the picture of their candidate, and the one with the least votes would later be announced as the winner. So that is what I was told. That is what gave rise to agitation for pluralism
pluralism, yeah.
that now ushered in the fight for a new constitution. It started with opening democratic space, where we now had a change of section 2A to a multi-party system. So then that, like senior counsel is saying, the elections were rigged by government officials. Like the returning officers were DCs and DOs.
Yeah, that's right.
And whoever they were told, I hear from the state house as is the guy to come, they had to ensure, even if that guy had 0 votes, they had to ensure to ensure that they looked votes anywhere around there to make him the winner. So that is how it was stolen. Then in 1992, I was still young in primary. In 1992 now, I would say Moi, the late President Moi rigged in 1992 to some extent, but Moi capitalized on the division of the opposition. Because collectively, if you look statistics, opposition combined had 64% of votes against Moi's 36. So Moi was a minority president, courtesy of division in the opposition. It happened in 1997 again. Opposition was divided. Kibaki, Raila, Wamalu, Wangilu. Collectively, their votes were more by over close to 60 against Moi's. So that's why I come in 2002. I would say that is the election closest. That is the election that is closest to being free and fair. 2002 election, because the entire opposition rallied behind the late President Kibaki.
How was it that only in 2002 did you have like...
In that election, the contestation, I think to a large extent was neutralized by the fact that the two main candidates were from one region. That is the late President Mwai Kibaki and the current retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. They were both from Central. So the tension that he was talking about was not there. Because if you look at the statistics, in fact, Uhuru almost beat Kibaki. Kibaki almost got equal share of votes in Central as Kibaki. And he beat Kibaki in Rift Valley. So Kibaki's main strongholds were Nyanza, Western, Nairobi, Coast, Northeastern, and Eastern. You see? So because the two main candidates were from one region, it was simple. Like whoever comes is still from the same region. So the contestation, as opposed, because we are an ethnically divided society, as opposed to an election where maybe a Kikuyu Akamba or a Kikuyu Luo or a Luo lawyer contesting. So that's why that election, and then this is my opinion. To a large extent, President Moi, having gotten power from Central, that's per se from a Kikuyu, Moi wanted to return power back. And so Moi, from experience of the last two elections, that is 92 and 97, knew opposition want to unite. So Moi went for the novice Uhuru Kenyatta, because he knew opposition would be divided, and Uhuru, and by the fact that he was a candidate of the ruling party, majority of Central vote will go to him. If he combines with Rift Valley, Northeastern, and some pockets in Eastern, Uhuru will win. Because then it was still simple majority. The rule that the candidate must get Ghana 50% plus 1 vote was not there. So that was the miscalculation. Then that was the Moi's mindset. He wanted to return power there, but then he saw an opportunity that Kibaki group, because Kibaki, Ngilu, and Wamala were already in NAK. Raila group was still part of KANU, but now KANU was divided into two. So Moi, in his thinking, knew opposition won't unite. At some point, if you analyze well, you realize that the Raila group was leaning towards the Honorable Mudavadi as their candidate. And Mudavadi was sellable even across among the KANU stalwarts better than Uhuru. So Moi knew if the other group brings Mudavadi and he has Uhuru and Kibaki is also contesting, they are likely to lose to Mudavadi. Moi somehow used Mudavadi's mom to convince Mudavadi to withdraw from that group. You see? So he knew very well that the other group will not unite. That's why he settled on Uhuru. But now the opposition beat him in his own game. They settled on Kibaki. So that election became, so to Moi, because truth be told, much as Kibaki was an opposition candidate, but Kibaki, I think even in 1992, Kibaki was just a spoiler for the likes of Matiba and Jaramogi. Kibaki was a KANU stalwart up to the last minute. Then he defected from KANU and formed DP.
Okay.
In fact, at some point it was alleged that the likes of Wangari Maathai, if I hear that history and from people who are then there who have shared with me, even went to London to convince Matiba to step down for Jaramogi so that he becomes second. Matiba was ready. So the only thing that made Matiba refuse now to step down was the fact that Kibaki came in with DP. So Matiba didn't want to give room to Kibaki in Central.
Okay, quite interesting. Let me come to Wakili here, because Wakili, you look, you check along the way, we didn't have things like biometrics, digital registers, electronic voting systems, which came much later.
2010.
And this actually brought up to enhance transparency. But the question is, has it actually sophisticated ways to steal elections? Has it achieved the transparency that was intended?
You see, Kwach, you have been using the right statement. When somebody is stealing, if I can go back to stealing, you have an intention.
Okay.
In fact, you cannot be convicted if you have no intention to steal. Those who rig election have not only an intention, they have a plan. In fact, some of them do strategic planning.
Exactly.
They sit, they sort, and they decide what to do. But I would like to give you my own view and my own observation. First, there must be that intention, there must be an environment for rigging, and then there must be methods for rigging. If I can start with 1988, Moi had a problem in consolidating power in 1980s, which led up eventually to the coup of 1982. That shocked him, and he started planning. And of course, when he looked around, he could tell who are the problem. The Luos, I believe, the Kikuyus, the elite, and the rest. So he started that repressive system. And the first one was in 1988. That is the first interesting rigging when he introduced a Murorongo. And the Murorongo could have even been fair if it was given its own merit. But even this Murorongo where people lined up, the shorter lines won. And the most glaring was Matiba. And Matiba had, in fact, anticipated that to happen. Because I believe he had even people photographing, taking video, or whatever. He had documented properly that I am the one who was in the wrong queue. And you see the returning officer was also there to make sure that the wrong line is not going to be, the wrong queue will not be announced as the winner.
I heard of this story, that during those times, the returning officer, or rather the policeman will ask you, mbona mnafinyana hapa na huku kuna nafasi? Then you'll be keen to join the other line.
All manner of things were used to make sure the one the Moi wanted came in as a candidate, parliamentary, or whatever. So that was the beginning, outright rigging. Then comes 1991. He agrees that we must go multi-party. And then he saw he will lose multi-party. He clearly did his arithmetic and found the Kikuyus, the Luos, and all those disgruntled people will not vote for him. And in any case, he had done quite a lot of things. He had detained people, he had jailed others. So people were very angry. So what he did in 1992, he came with what I can call demographic rigging. What demographic rigging means, you remove people from the register. So in the Kikuyus in the Rift Valley were prohibited and they were beaten so that they could not take the ID card. There were deaths. There were even people killed. I do recall one of the priests in Moro, Brother Ale Timmons, I did his case. He was killed because he was advocating that the Kikuyus must take an ID card. Because ID card was the means for being registered as a voter and voting. So that was another type of rigging, demographic. Remove the population that is hostile to you. I do believe, and if we are not careful, that tactic is still going to be used. Demographic removal. Now, then of course we had, rigging direct by making sure that there are no agents during the actual voting, and if they are there, they are demobilized. Somebody else is doing the marking. So there is the environment in which people are voting, and then there is the problem of enforcing the rules and the regulation, the actual misconducts. And those, some of them came through during the election petition. You find some agents have been removed from an area. And I can also say, this agency problem, removing the agent, is actually killing the evidence that there is rigging. You see, because you are supposed to be there to witness that the vote is in accordance with the law. So then there are many other forms of rigging. And I would like to say, when you look at rigging, you must look at the instruments that are necessary to empower a voter to vote. First, according to our constitution, you must be a citizen of this country. The constitution is clear, only citizen. The citizen are by birth or by naturalization. You see, that's critical. Now, if you have non-citizen being given identity card, you are giving them a route to go and take a vote and vote. That is rigging. So rigging could be before or during or even after. You ask about biometrics and the rest. Yes. I think Riegra is the one who said after 2007,
Yes.
we need to change and bring a method that will fully address the issue of, actual manual rigging, but voting. But I also want to correct that all this electronic voting is not complete. It's only limited to a certain extent. Our voting is still manual. There may be an identification process, and there may be registration and also maybe transmission. But the actual putting a tick is manual. And again, the assembling of the voters. People must go to the polling to the registration center and register themselves. You can register by, I'm not sure you can register by using a phone. You must present yourself, present credential. Now, the greatest rigging, as I see in 2027, will come in the mobilization of vote. That is where the rigging is going to be.
How?
Currently, there are claims that non-citizens are registering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now,
Interesting.
if
Just like what we saw happening in Uganda. Kenyans voting.
I hope what we
Kenyans
did
voting
media
in
is
Uganda.
not true. I hope it is not true that we affected the Ugandan elections. But anyway, you can see how serious. And I think this is even more serious for our country. It's almost reasonable. Because you are overturning the will of the people, the citizens. And the people who are coming are only picking an ID card. Whereas citizenship requires naturalization.
Okay, quite interesting. Let me just bring you in, because there's actually a lot of secrets also surrounding the elections,
Yeah.
the election servers, and how the votes are transmitted. Most of the time, you even see the votes were being transmitted, and then there is a stop, and then later on, someone is. So there's been a lot of questions actually, like 207. So why are there a lot of secrets in transmission?
Our
and
problem
servers?
with the election, our problem with the election is not the voting. Actually, Kenyans vote. Our problem with election is the transmission of results. Right from the polling stations to the national, to some elephant called National Tallying Center. That is where the problem is. It was the problem before pre-2010 constitution, is still the problem post-2010 constitution. Pre-2010 constitution, everything was manual. Post-2010 constitution, we have an integrated electoral system where registration is done biometrically, voter verification is done biometrically, voting is manual, then transmission is integrated. Electronic transmission accompanied by a physical presentation of Form 34A, that is for president, for verification. That doesn't happen. Why? It's because some player somewhere wants it not to happen so that they benefit. Because just like Senior Counsel is saying, Kriegler report post 2007 election said we need an electronic system of transmission of results so that we eliminate mischief along the way. Because one of the problems in 2007 was that at some point the National Tallying Center was at KICC. Some returning officers from some region were barred from bringing the result, and they were told until further notice, until they will be told how to do it. Are you seeing? So the Kriegler report wanted a situation where results as declared at the polling station reach the National Tallying Center servers first, then the hard copy that is signed by the presiding officer plus the agents of political parties or the candidates comes later for verification. That's why I think it is Article 39 or 34 or 44 of Election Acts talks of an electronic system or an election system that is simple, verifiable, secure, accurate, transparent, and accountable. Have you seen? Simple in the sense that the transmission doesn't need a lot of things to be done. It's just a simple text accompanied by an image of that form captured in that EVD kit and then sent. But there you find we have a problem. You see, it is, I tell you, technology can be designed to fail. They say garbage in, garbage out. What you feed the system is what it gives you. We have an efficient money transaction system in this country that has been running for over 20 years. Actually, it's now close to 25 years, the M-Pesa service. That thing transacts billions. There are millions of people using it daily. But it hardly crashes. It can just go run through a downtime for some few minutes and then it is up again. But now, we can't get it right for an electronic election result transmission system that only transmits results for a period of around 12 hours. We can't get it right. And what makes it even worse, we spent, like in the last election, we spent over 40 billion in this thing. In 2013, we tried it, it failed. In 2017, we tried it, it failed. We cannot be a country where just a simple system to transmit results from polling station fails. Then we resort to now IBC chairman receiving results, verifying, coming to the screen to announce. If that thing is efficient, it should be random because results are coming from different polling stations in a random manner. We should just see the screen how the numbers are moving for each candidate. But that doesn't happen because they have designed it to fail for some people to benefit.
So who designs?
So I would like to come in and
Yes.
we have been talking about electronics. I'm also aware of the games.
Yeah.
Our constitution, and I'll read the article that is relevant, that is voting. Article 86, it says, whatever voting method is used, the system must be simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent.
Yes, exactly.
So for me, whatever electronics you apply must meet that criteria.
Exactly.
Now, the other thing is this. Is it possible for an ordinary Kenyans to understand the electronics? It's a preserve of a few. Maybe this time we have Gen Z. They will be able to manage 2027 because this is their area. But the fact is, whatever system you use must meet that criteria. Whether it's actual voting, which must be simple, or retrieving information must be simple. You talked about servers. What are servers? How can a Kenyan know what is a server? What is the content of a server? He has to go to somebody. I saw in the petition, doing a petition, the kind of witnesses who are brought to testify on what system was used and why the server cannot be opened or where the server can be opened. To me, it doesn't comply with the Constitution. And again, as he has said, our people are not stupid. They are running M-Pesa. If you go to the village, my mom or your grandmother may know how to get her money from the M-Pesa, or even to say something to her child. We should not bring complication that say, oh, our server is in France, our server is in South America, our server. We should conform to the Constitution. I know the problem that we have now, even today, is retrieving information. Our Constitution is also very clear, and our electoral law is clear. After the elections, those materials must be available for a period of about 6 months. So we still have a problem of retrieving information. Why should I, as a Kenyan voter, have problem in accessing the information how I voted? You see, so that criteria need to be relooked. We are maybe approaching the AI now. I think we are moving around looking for better equipment, and they should comply with this criteria. And as they have said, yes, there is also the human component. There is hacking, there is feeding the wrong information, there is even deliberately interfering with the physical. A lot of those equipment did not work. Why? There is no sufficient charging. So, for us to employ a system, we must comply with the Constitution.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. We have come short of time, and of course, we are coming to the end of the show. But let me just begin with you, sir, because you're talking about electoral integrity.
Yes.
So let me just ask you, what should a real electoral integrity look like in practice? And actually, what should then the citizens and observers even demand from their electoral systems?
That's a very good question, and I will still emphasize.
Yes.
Simple,
Yes.
verifiable,
Yes.
and it must be a system that is friendly.
Okay.
Friendly in the terms that the people themselves, and mind you, our Constitution is very clear. That voting is not for the elite. It's for the people of Kenya. And we, the people who form this Constitution, the bulk of it are people who are not that sophisticated. How many people can manage a computer in our community? There are very few. So what I'm saying is this: we must have a system that is simple. And this is the Constitution. Simple, verifiable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, interesting. Let me come to you, and then you will give your parting shot. So my question to you is that when we have these elections, because we've said elections are stolen, we've given different ways through which they're stolen, they have always bred to ethnic divisions and even sometimes violence after the elections. Why? Even as you give your parting shot.
One, the reasons why our elections are very emotional is because I think it's the way Kenya as a society was founded. We founded a society that was based on ethnic groupings. We didn't have a society that is national. That is the difference between us, and I would give an example, Tanzania. Nyerere founded a society that was Tanzania. But sorry to say this, Jomo Kenyatta founded as a society that is ethnic. That is where the problem lies. That's why. And then when Moi came, Moi said anaendeleza nyayo, anafuata nyayo ya Kenyatta. So Moi didn't strive to kill ethnic divisions, he entrenched it. In fact, they are using, the ruling elite are using tribal divisions to rule. You see, so that is why we are an ethnically. So that's why over time, people have lived to think that if one of our own is in power, will benefit, like senior counsel was saying, which is not the case. When the ruling elite get to power, like he was saying about the current president, is there because of his interests and the close associates. But we have been made from independence to believe that we can only benefit when one of our own is in power. Because you would ideally ask, for instance, a Kalenjin, what did you benefit for 24 years President Moi was in power? Nothing. Go to Baringo. I have worked for BBC Media as a research officer. And I've traveled in Baringo to very remote areas in Baringo. Apart from Kabaranet, there's nothing in Baringo, and Moi was president for 25 years, 24 years. Are you seeing? So, and if you then go to Central. Central now so far has had 3 presidents. That is cumulatively 35 years. The ordinary Kikuyu didn't benefit from the Jomo Kenyatta, didn't benefit from Kibaki, didn't benefit from Uhuru. So this thing was made, we were made to believe from independence, because the ruling class used divide and rule, the ethnic divide, so that they can control us. I see. That is the reason why our elections are very motive. In fact, Kenyans tried to cure this by ushering in new constitution. The basis for devolution in constitution was to neutralize power of the presidency, so that power is diffused vertically downwards. I've seen, and that is the reason why horizontally at the national level, power, for some extent, power was also diffused through formation of independent and constitutional bodies, so that the president doesn't have that unanimous power, that or the overwhelming power that, let's say, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta and Moi enjoyed. I see. I would say Kibaki, President Kibaki, to some extent, Kibaki was a gentleman. He assumed office with absolute power, just like Moi and Kenyatta. But Kibaki was an intellect. So he ruled using the brain. I see. That is what Uhuru was lacking. That is what Ruto is lacking now. I see. Kibaki used the brain. That's why during his time, Kibaki inherited an economic that was in ruins. It was growing, at that time it was growing at negative 0.3. But he brought, by the time he was leaving the government, economy was doing at 7%. I see. So the only thing that failed Kibaki, otherwise Kibaki got it right, 60% and above. The only thing that Kibaki didn't get economically was right, 100, close to 100. Kibaki just failed in the politics. He didn't cure the tribal divide politics. That is where he got it wrong. Otherwise, if he got the politics right, Kenya would have picked.
I'd like to mention one thing before, sorry if I have got it right. I don't believe we are tribalists. I don't even believe there is any ethnicity in Kenya in elections or even after. This is an animal who is caged for a period of 5 years. On the 5th year, he's called. He's not there because in between, we are traveling in the same matatu.
Exactly.
We are going to the same job. And there is no moment in time when we are all struggling, we remember our tribe. But somebody somewhere has a caged animal called tribe. And he called it when he needed it.
During elections.
So we have, and again, with the devolution, we killed a lot of this issue of funding, that one region is being given more than the other. So we have equalization of funds. We have everything. So, and we actually address in our Constitution 2010 the issue of marginalization. If you remove ethnicity and talk about marginalization, that makes sense. Some areas have deficiencies. Equalization fund exists if they have been mobilized, that is. But my point is, between now and 2027, again, this animal is going to be called because it has a job. You see? Otherwise, this intellectual discussion, as we go along, discussing with very many other people in our country, we will find none of them has any tribal agenda. But it will come. And Moi perfected it.
Yeah.
He will use one elder from Makamba tribe, he will use another one from Kikuyu, and he will call them at different times. But it is this animal that became important that particular time.
Wow.
Actually, just as a particular, as senior counsel is saying, that's what I was saying, that our politicians, the political class, mobilize our politics along ethnicity. We don't have ideology. There is no ideology. That's why we don't even have political parties, because political parties are founded on ideologies. I'm a Democrat, or I should be a member of UDA because I subscribe to UDA's ideology, much as I'm a Luo. But those are not there. We mobilize our politics around ethnicity. That's why we have tribal kingpins. So like right now, ODM is still surviving, sorry to say, because the Right Honorable Raila is still alive or is still active in politics. If Raila exits active politics, ODM will disintegrate. We've seen them, all the parties. We had PNU during Kibaki, we had TNA and Jubilee during Uhuru. Now Ruto, if Ruto exits now, UDA is no more. Because it was founded on ethnic basis.
Yeah.
There's no ideology. People belong to party, like you go to UK, people are members of Labour Party because of the ideology. People are members of the Conservative in UK because of the ideology. Go to America. People are members of Democrats or Republicans because of the ideology. But here, the only ideology that thrives, as senior counsel is saying, there is the political mobilization. That is the ideology.
Wow. Quite intriguing. Your last words, Senior?
Well, you have picked on a very important topic, rigging. And I think Kenyans should address it now, way forward to 2027. They should not ignore it. In 2007, it caused violence. We do not want to see violence. But I have a feeling that the political interests are pushing Kenyans to tribalism, to regionalism, and we may go back to 2007 unless we are very careful. The temperature is very high. We have seen Gen Z being killed, just campaigning, just making demands. We have people who are disappeared. All those things should be a clear indicator that something is wrong. And we should therefore start addressing the issue of 2027 with sobriety.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senior Counsel Mbuthi Gathenge, and of course, Eliud Onyango, a researcher. That was quite insightful as we got to discuss the intrigues of the elections of Kenya, and particularly the rigging. And perhaps we will maybe in other conversations ask who rigs on behalf of who, because there is also that perspective of the people that help us rig, or rather the hands, like the Western. I've heard of that. I don't know how much that is true, but of course we've heard of other powers actually coming to sit or unseat people in the continent, and perhaps we'll have asked what is the agenda. But of course, that is a conversation for another time. It has been a great discourse as we got to chew these issues on elections into policies that you, our viewer, can clearly get to swallow. Well, my name is Eugyne Kwach. This is the PowerTable, and this is where we bring all the thought leaders, we bring politicians and leaders to speak and actually tell us what the thoughts are on these critical national issues. Well, it's been a great time. See you next time. A good night.